Welcome to LOP Chat. Tonight is a special event. Interview with a New Age Messiah. This gentleman had a revelation looking into a mirror. The goddess spoke to him. This is fascinating stuff, folks. Without further ado, New Age Messiah, tell us your story. How did you become the New Age Messiah?
Okay, this could take a few minutes if I, describe it in a way that's worthy of what really happened. I was very philosophical my whole life. I kind of went on a mission I was 40 years old when I went on a mission and decided to find something nobody ever found before. But what led to that was about 15 years of kind of on again, off again, hyper-Christianity, falling away Christianity, always really wanting it to be true or to make it true in some way, and unable to do so, and then finally realizing, what happened at the tomb is different depending what gospel you read. What Jesus said on the cross is different depending what gospel you read, and it just, it never really planted itself. My theory is it can't be really planted inside of a person because it's ultimately just scatterbrained, and that's why the whole church and everybody thinks something different, and there's no two denominations, no two people that think alike about it, because there's really no real comprehensive way to view it, and it doesn't really comprehensively address anything or with any integrity, So anyway, I had a sort of a mental decision when I was in college. I was going across campus at University of Minnesota. I was thinking how impossible it is that I can look and see and think and talk and walk, and how infinitely impossible the organism is that I am. And at the same time, a blade of grass, if you take like a millimeter of it, it's also just incredibly amazing. So I just came to like this little decision in my mind that reality is God. There's nothing else that reality could be other than God. So that was like, sort of planted in my brain. I didn't act on it really or anything. I just came to that conclusion. I continued in church and everything, but once I abandoned, I said to myself, I don't believe it. And that was when I was about 40 years old. And when I did, there was a burden that lifted off my shoulders. My eyes opened wide. And I saw the universe completely through my own eyes rather than through the filter that the Bible had, put in really addressing every thought. I was constantly trying to make things in my soul compliant with biblical principles, blah, blah, blah. And when I just finally said, I don't believe it, like I've said that, like Final Answer, there used to be a TV show, I don't believe it. And all of a sudden, I had this, super light feeling, and I could see the world, and I was just, I'm going to find something new was my decision. I am going to find something new nobody ever found before. And part of that was because people were fakey. I didn't think they were natural. You'd walk up. We had kids, and we'd go knock on neighbors' door, and they'd answer the door with this really fakey, hi, how are you crap. And you just could tell they weren't even there. They were just, blank. And I had that at work, too. People being professional, and they were really just, they weren't even there. There was this shell of a person, with a whatever kind of look on their face. And you walk around now, I called it the How Are You puppet show, and everybody's like, hey, how's it going? Hey, how are you? And it's really just a mindless sort of repetition so I just thought, well, people aren't natural. They should be more like young children who are very natural, and, like a 4-year-old or 3-year-old, or, when they are completely affectionate and they don't have any reservations about being who they are and how they are and expressing what they feel, and they're really, in my opinion, the perfect beings. They're innocent, and I just decided, what, I think we all are by nature, but we lose that and we can get it back. That was kind of the underlying feeling. We can get it back. I can go back to being the innocent child I was, because I was like most people. I partied and did radical idiot stuff and sinned or whatever you want to call it, and lied and cheated and stole and did everything bad you can do without, thankfully, going to jail, which I probably could have a dozen times, but I got away with everything I did pretty much, except, of course, in the eyes of the universe, or has turned out to be reality is God, the universe, whatever, the goddess Tefnut ended up speaking to me. But when I declared the mission, I knew that I was sacrificing myself. I can't I can't tell somebody that as a matter of fact, but I can just, you can believe me or not. At the time that I said I'm going to find something nobody ever found before, my first thought was I need to go into the depths. I don't know how to go into the depths to find something new, but that's where I'm going to go, and the only way I could feel in my soul to go there was to completely make myself 100% as real as possible, as transparent as possible, and just say everything I felt, do everything I wanted to do, as much as possible, just be as real as I possibly could be. I had a wife that wasn't romantic. We hadn't had any kind of romance for years and years, and I just had like this lapse of not being with any girls for like the longest time. And I never really had true love, because when I was truly in love, it was somebody who was into the Bible, or I was into the Bible, and it was just always messed up. We never crossed from romance into, I hate to use the word, sex. The word gets so tiring, but it just never really was complete for me, and I wanted that more than anything at the time. And so I told my wife I want to have a girlfriend, and she was like, I couldn't care less. You want to have a girlfriend, we were friends and everything, and I could talk to her about any girl that I met or whatever. And we had a good thing going for a couple of years where I was out trying to find a new romance. And she met one of my girlfriends, and it was this situation where everybody knew I was married and I had a girlfriend and I was getting away with it. And my life at the time was very eventful, and I was writing online as Gloopy Boy. My mission was online mostly. I told people I'm going to go into the depths. You can watch the carnage, blah, blah, blah. My name is Gloopy Boy. And they turned up writing threads. I was very popular. I was a very eloquent writer and, poetic, and also very strong against Christianity, and, very powerful ways that people really had no answer for. And they called me Gloopy, Gloop for short, whatever. And my Russian language I studied in the Army, the word Gloopy means stupid, but somehow I had it in my mind that it meant clever. When I made my username on the internet, Gloopy Boy, I thought I was Clever Boy, and I found out it meant stupid, because Umni means clever and Gloopy means stupid, and somehow I got the two mixed up. So anyway, I go online, a hero type persona going, or, not really, but it was definitely charismatic, and I was a minor league star is what I said, and really that's what I was. And people around town started to hate me because I was married with a girlfriend, and talk behind my back. And if I started talking to a girl, somebody'd walk up and whisper in her ear, and she'd look at me like I was the devil. And and then I got caught in a house. I was in real estate. I got caught in a house with a girl, and that turned into just a nightmare. I could tell, if I could just tell that story, it would blow your mind how amazing it was, as far as drama. Like, I want to make my story a movie. I'll just tell it real quick. I was in a house with this girl. We were upstairs. It was an old house that somebody listed, and they had moved away, and it was just a rotten, not rotten, but nothing house. So I meet this other real estate girl there, and we go upstairs, and we're getting it on, and somebody from the neighbor comes over thinking, whose car's there, what's going on. So they walk in the house, and they're like, who's here? So I have to walk down, and she sees what's going on pretty much without absolutely seeing. So she calls the real estate office, and so I know I'm in trouble. We kind of get out of the house, whatever, and I come back because I have this intuitive thing, that I need to create a diversion or a distraction, whatever. There were mice in the house, and I bought a bunch of mouse traps and set them and slept the night in the house, just because I really was just sure that something really bad was about to happen and I needed a diversion. It was a totally intuitive thing, what I did. So I get up the next morning, and I walk out of the door, and the neighbor guy's looking at me like I'm the devil, and, you rotten. I mean, the hatred was just, I could have been a murderer, and he couldn't have hated me more, just the hatred. It was just amazing. So I go in the office, and the lady, she was really nice. The owner's wife called me into her office, basically said I was fired. because I was caught in the house with a woman. I says, we were just talking. I lied. My motto, I forgot to say this, my motto when I was on the internet was reality is God. When you pretend or lie, you cease to exist, you die. Because I just believed, like a child, you don't pretend, you don't lie, you just, that's who you really are. And when you start pretending, putting on airs or whatever, and, faking like you like somebody or whatever, or lying, you die. The real you is not there. You're dead, at least for that moment, So reality is God. When you pretend or lie, you cease to exist, you die. And I was not going to lie no matter what, ever. I was going to be real. That was my mission. I knew if I was, I would go down in flames. And so, when push came to shove, I lied about that. No, nothing was happening. And this lady was a church lady. So when the owner of the real estate place called the lady, she's like, are you suggesting something happened, And and then they're like, nothing happened. We were just talking. And I had already told, I had my shirt off in the office and everything, at the real estate place. And I already told the owner of the real estate place before this happened. I said, I'm on a mission. I'm doing everything I feel like doing. If I'm hot, I take my shirt off. I don't give any kind of credibility to social norms. I'm being this, and she's just kind of like, oh, whatever, At the time, it wasn't really serious. It just I had my shirt off in the office, and but she was already kind of aware of that, and I just said we were talking. I was talking about this and talking about that, and so she was kind of like half convinced, and she didn't want to accuse the other lady of being a liar, and so she goes to the house. I had put all the mouse traps in the washer and dryer room, in the laundry room, just because I wanted to hide them, because there was going to be a showing of the house that day from another real estate agent. And it happened, I didn't even think this, but it was luck, that the mice were coming into the house through the dryer vent. And so there were a half a dozen mouse traps. Every single one of them had a mouse in it. And when she asked, she had asked me, why were you in the house overnight? I said, I was catching mice. I was trying to figure out where they were coming from. And so she goes into the house and sees the freaking mouse traps, all full of mice. And she just is convinced at that time, oh, my gosh, he's telling the truth. So she comes in, gives me my stuff back, and, your eyes, blah, 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 She calls the owner of the house and says it was a misunderstanding, and I get away with it, but I feel like a rotten SOB every day I walk into the office. The secretaries are staring at me. I know I'm lying. They know I'm lying. Everybody knows I'm lying. I'm lying. And just eventually my whole psyche, or whatever you want to say, I just become kind of a self-loathing, miserable person, blah, blah, blah. And eventually I get in a real estate relationship with a guy who's superior intellect and just a super cool, super genius guy. And eventually he becomes my best friend. I hang out with him, but he just kind of amazes me and gets me under a spell with his genius and brilliant. He's super cool, and I'm in love with a woman who lives on the same lake as him by then, and it's a fancy house, and she's a fancy lady, and she has 3 kids the same age as my 3 kids, and we're like the Brady Bunch. We seriously looked like the Brady Bunch. She had the same haircut as Carol Brady. I kind of looked like, the dad Brady, whatever, and the kids. And so that was like my little fantasy. I got this woman in a fancy house on the lake, is Lake Tapps in Washington. And it's a gorgeous lake. She lived on the golf course in a big house, and he lived in a trailer across the lake. So I would hear her husband. She wasn't living with her husband. He had got caught cheating and was, very, very hostile and everything. And he threw everything she owned out in the yard. And when he found out I was going out with her, he threatened to kill me. One time he had friends with Verizon because he handled their cell phone towers. He was a maintenance guy, and he had all these higher up friends at Verizon, and somehow he was able to tap into her voicemail and figure out where I was going to be, and he ambushed me in my car, drugged me out, and started to, told me to get out of town. He was going to harpoon me, kill me, and sometimes when I'd show up at their house, I had to go through the gate, security gate, and it was dark at night, usually when I drive in there, because I'd have to come. It was 300 miles from where I live in Coeur d'Alene. And so, he'd follow me in there, and it was really seriously like I was just about to be murdered. I was in one of those situations where you get murdered, but I was madly in love with the woman. I wasn't going to back away. And anyway, the guy lived across the lake from her, and he eventually charmed her. And, we were in big real estate deals together, and I did the world for him. I was very smart in real estate, and I set him up with some really good deals. He made like $1 million with his funny money partner, thanks to my, I was good, and he was really, really good, and he made lots of money because of me, because he'd never made it on his own, and at the same time, he was a lot smarter than me, and, I was kind of under his spell. He was super cool, hardcore pot smoker. But the reason I'm telling this is because he eventually tortured me, psycho-tortured me to the point where I almost died. I was serious, and I'm still not all the way out of what happened when he tortured me, which was, really, really, really sick. And then she kind of took his side, and, she was in love with him. And anyway, I'm laying on my back almost dead. I am waiting. I've set up a man-made lake project for him. With my last little bit of sanity, I set it up so they could make a man-made lake, and there was going to be 250 houses, and I was promised to be the real estate agent, which would make me a millionaire, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they refused to pay me, blah, blah. I had to sue them because I was going to die, and it was really the only chance my soul had to survive was to fight back, Anyway, while I was laying on my back and near death, I get a call from his sidekick, and he says, Mike just saved a guy. He pulled him from a plane, has landed on the lake. He freaking crashed, and Mike jumped in the car or the plane and saved him, pulled him out, and just a minute later, like, the plane exploded, man. You couldn't believe it, la la la. So, yes, this is real. The plane crashed in front of his house, just like in the movies, on the lake, and he jumped in the cockpit, pulled the guy out, and dragged him to safety just before the plane exploded. And at the time, I had been to a Radiohead concert, and Radiohead, mostly the CD, what's it called? Anyway, it's their best one, or OK Computer is what I was listening to kind of like nonstop, because he's just so touching and sensitive and, deep, and it was healing me a little bit to listen to that. And I had been to a Radiohead concert there, near Seattle, and had this total enlightenment experience at the concert. Even though I was tortured, I tried to get her to go with me, but that's where she made it official that I was dumped, So I went to the concert by myself and had like a regression experience of my childhood, and I saw the universe the way it really is all at once, just in this like really angelic type. It was an amazing experience at the Radiohead concert. Let's just say it that way. Then I listened to the CD more, and it's got a song on there that says "Pull me out of the air crash, pull me out of the lake," and that's just one thing. I mean, there's like 100 things like that where it's just an unbelievable synchronicity. Well, the guy, after I sued him, I sued him on Pearl Harbor Day. I had no idea it was Pearl Harbor Day, but Pearl Harbor Day was my older brother's birthday, and he was the black sheep, and he treated me badly, and he was a bad influence on me, and just, it was kind of weird. Plus, it was Pearl Harbor Day, I didn't think of it at the time. I didn't even have any idea it was Pearl Harbor Day when I sued, but I sued on Pearl Harbor Day, and then they deposed me. I got the notice, and it said, "You're deposed February 14th, so I thought it was kind of nice. Oh, good, that's kind of nice. I'll be there on February 14th, Valentine's Day. So, I just kind of had a nice feeling about that. I didn't think much of it. But see, before this all happened, I had already looked my heart in the mirror, tortured, my eyes were crazed. People saw me and they thought I was some kind of child molester, or just anything bad you can think of when you see a crazy person, what that person is. And they all just made up all these stories, la la la. I had been a photographer during like an artsy period. I had taken pictures of gymnastics kids. My kid was in gymnastics. He was kind of like a highly competitive superstar in gymnastics, and I was taking pictures where he does the gymnastics totally on the up and up, totally, they wanted to do an advertisement. I did an advertisement. I should post a picture of it on the website. But the parents, there's probably 200 kids at that place, and the 200 parents, and, I was very prominent in the community as one of the, up and coming anyway, real estate agents. I was doing the biggest deals in town, and I had a superstar gymnast. I was pretty high profile person, plus all the being on a mission stuff and having a girlfriend and all this, and then they see me taking all these pictures, and then they see me crazy, And I wasn't crazy when I was taking pictures, not in the least. I was just perfectly, I wrote a beautiful advertisement, but the guy drove me crazy, literally, and so everybody put two and two together. They thought, well, he was taking pictures of kids, and he's crazy. He's a freaking child molester. And at the same time in Idaho, there was a guy who got caught, or, not that he got caught. He literally busted into some family's house and killed the mom and dad and stole the kids and did, horrible things. It was a huge national story, this guy, and at the same time, everybody thinks I'm a pedophile, so I'm the most hated. I was already hated, and my friends had already dumped me because I was too weird or whatever, on this silly mission. And now I'm considered by everybody who sees me to be a rapist, pedophile, stalker, whatever you want to say, and I can't go anywhere. I'm thrown out of everywhere I go, la 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 la. Coffee shops, bars, people surround me, threaten to kill me. It's really, really bad, and I've done really nothing wrong except, daily about in a house as a real estate agent, which, is wrong, but certainly wasn't anything that bad. So that's where I'm at. Then I'm reading a book by Deepak Chopra about the heart and the image and how the two are not in sync with each other. You have your self-image and then you have your heart, and they are two completely different things. And when you are sort of referencing your self-image as yourself, then you are not innocent. You're not in a state of grace, whatever you want to say. And I'm reading this book by Deepak, and I go to the mirror and I look at my heart in the mirror. My eyes are crazy. I look horrible. I used to be, kind of movie starish. People said I looked like Richard Gere. People said I looked like the Superman guy, Christopher Reeve. At different stages of my life, I looked like some movie star or another. And so I also was kind of a more than usual type, look in the mirror type person. My hair, that's kind of the flaw that I had, is I was very image-centric compared to most people, more so than most people. And so I looked at my image in the mirror, which was horrible now. I looked ugly. And then I looked at my heart and closed my eyes, because I'm like, okay, there's my heart. What the hell is my heart? I don't know what my heart is. I decided it was a heart, It's just a thing that beats. I have no idea. But I closed my eyes, and I kind of twinkled my consciousness down into my soul until, lo and behold, I was inside my heart. I could tell. My was inside my heart, and all of a sudden I felt this same me that was the third grade teacher's pet who got called on to answer all the questions, and I helped the teacher grade. I was in second grade, actually. In third grade I became a class clown, but in second grade, I had the teacher that loved me, and I was the pet, and I had this same me then, which would tell the story. So you'd know what a radical break that was from who I was as a crazed, deranged, crippled torture victim. And now all of a sudden I'm this sweet, innocent little boy again. And when I looked my heart in the mirror, I said, this is me inside my heart, like I normally think that's me in the mirror. I changed my identification. And at that instant, there was like this massive flood of light, of energy, in the words, this is going to change the world, were in my brain, but they were not processed by my thoughts. They were just there as an absolute fact. So as an absolute fact, and then the words, look your heart in the mirror, and then mirror jewelry, like within 5 seconds. This is going to change the world. Look your heart in the mirror, mirror jewelry. And I knew at that instant, my kids, I'm going to be famous. Told anybody who listened, I'm going to be famous. I said I'm going to be the next Gandhi. And I find out my birthday's on the same day as Gandhi. So anyway, back to the law case. The guy who I sued who tortured me, we were in court on June 5th, 2006. And I had written a letter to the attorneys in the newspaper saying that the man-made lake was ominous because of the nature of the person who built it, and the shape of it is kind of a serpent type shape, and the town it was built in had a reputation for devil worship. La, la, la. I had already wrote all that stuff to the attorneys and to the newspaper 5 or 6 months earlier. So we're in court on June 5th, 2006, and the guy's attorney says he'll be in my office tomorrow to answer Mr. Johnson's interrogatories. I'm Mr. Johnson. So that was on 656, and the instant he said that, I thought tomorrow is 666. And that's, up to that point, I had kind of sensed that there was a divine aspect to the story. But when he said that, and I thought 666, I thought, I am the good guy in this story. No one knows it yet, but I am the good guy in this story. And he's the bad guy. Now I know for a fact there's a divine intervention going on here. And then, miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle kept happening. And, you can ask me any questions now. I know I've talked quite a while. Thanks.
Now, when the goddess spoke to you, how did you know it was the goddess?
Well, I didn't. At first, I was laying there. There was, one way I survived was to rent the rooms in my house, and I would rent them to whoever would pay, and there were a couple of guys in my house that were just a nuisance, and I was laying in my bed. I had just spoke a couple of days earlier to a guy talking about the show Lost, and he talked about Egypt, and, there were Egyptian symbols in Lost, and we were both very interested in the show, and he was a kind of a scholar type, and he said Egyptians were the first people to go away from worshiping the goddess. And when he said goddess, I had this little twinkle because I had felt like I was in a womb of sorts while I was, in the torture state trying to enlighten my way out, basically the spiritual path. So I had this twinkling about the goddess. I really didn't think too much more about it. And then I'm laying on my bed and just sitting here thinking, I'm like, when is this ever going to change? This is so miserable. I'm miserable. I got these miserable people living in my house, making noises that just horrible. And I had been within an inch of being a millionaire with that real estate deal. I made good money as a real estate agent. I never lacked for money, beyond college. And all of a sudden I was completely broke, almost dead, and it was a really, really, really miserable situation. But I'm laying there, and then there's this voice that didn't startle me at all, came completely from within my soul. No one else could have heard it, and it was a lady's voice. I'm very angry, and then there was Tef Nut cooking, but I didn't understand the nut part. I heard I'm very angry, Tef something cooking. And I was just like, well, I knew there had to be somebody involved here that was divine, and that was who it was, I guess. And it took me a couple days to really let that sink in, is that it was a goddess. What else could it be? It was a goddess. I had no idea which goddess. I had no idea Egypt, nothing. I went on the Lost website that I was writing, and I said, the goddess spoke to me. And, I had already declared myself. I had gone on different websites as New Age Messiah probably a year before that, the local newspaper. Then I was on Hannity. I made a huge splash on Hannity as New Age Messiah. I got Keith Olbermann involved, It was pretty big, and then it kind of went away because Hannity didn't like me making fun of Rush Limbaugh's drug use, whatever. But not Hannity, but, their forum moderators, they kicked me off. But anyway, I didn't really instantly know it was a goddess. I just knew somebody said, I'm very angry, Tef something cooking, and I instantly thought Teflon pan, and I was using a Teflon pan that was all scratched up, and I thought she's mad because I'm cooking with a Teflon pan that's scratched up, And then I'm like, no, that can't be it. It's got to be something else. And it took me like a couple months to really come to the conclusion that Tef whatever had to be her name. That's the only thing that could fit in that blank. That's the only word that could fit. It had to be her name. So then I'm reading a book about Egyptian gods and goddesses because I'm studying Lost, and there's tons of that kind of stuff on Lost, and I see the word Tefnut, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's who frickin' spoke to me, Tefnut, And at the time I was like, this kind of sucks. I was hoping to be some famous goddess, not somebody I never heard of, and you know what I mean? It's like, oh, geez, what is this? Come on. But then the more I read about Tefnut, the more I realized the freaking boss of the universe spoke to me.
Now that you had your revelation, and you're now the New Age Messiah. Where do you go from here? You said you perform miracles. What kind of miracles have you performed? And like I said, where'd you go from there? I mean, you had your epic revelation, staring into the mirror. Now what?
No, I never said I did miracles. She did all the miracles. I was involved in miracles. I sort of participated because, I filed the suit that ended up creating a lot of these date miracles. I made the pendant that I sent to Starbucks. Oh, I didn't tell this story yet. So when I looked my heart in the mirror, I thought Mirror Julie, so I made a pendant, and then I made a brochure that I sent to Starbucks, and on the day I sent it to Starbucks, I'm on my bicycle, I ride home, and I have a basket on the front of my bicycle. I pull the Rolling Stone magazine out of my mailbox. I ride in Coeur d'Alene, and then, I open up the Rolling Stone magazine to kind of read it, and the first words I read are, used to work at Pizza Hut in Coeur d'Alene. There's a story about Kid Cannabis, and this guy that used to work at Pizza Hut became a pot smuggler and had a multi-million-dollar pot smuggling operation, and they busted him, right? So Rolling Stone did an article about this called Kid Cannabis, and it's all based in Coeur d'Alene. The guy used to work at Pizza Hut in Coeur d'Alene. I'm sitting in Pizza Hut in Coeur d'Alene when I opened the magazine to read it, and it just blew my freaking mind. They made a movie about that, they made a movie called Kid Cannabis, and then the next thing I opened to in the Rolling Stone is Paul McCartney on a bicycle, and I call my landlord about the story. He lives in Rescue, California. He rescued me, and he says, I have tickets to see Paul McCartney in 3 nights. It's just completely bizarre, but that's a synchronicity that's so far inexplicable. That happened before the timeline. I don't remember exactly, but it happened. And so the miracles, I never said I did any miracles. I don't even profess to be slightly anything like the alleged Messiah of 2,000 years ago. There's nothing. I think that short story is 100% fabricated, not 90%. I think it's 100% fabrication, and I think I can totally defend that. So there's people have an idea in their mind that's based on that, but why? You know what I mean? It's like, why do you believe that's true? Do you have a good reason to believe that's true? Nobody has a good reason to believe that's true. There's no. But the thing is, with my story, there's 100% backing of facts in court. I made a video with that Rolling Stone thing that I sent. Rolling Stone had a contest a couple months later that if you sent in a little audition video or whatever, you could be in their magazine as a intern. So I made a video. I told them about my story, and I thought, well, maybe I'm supposed to be an intern at Rolling Stone magazine. At the time, I didn't have any real idea about the political leanings of Rolling Stone or whatever. But anyway, I made that video of me holding the Rolling Stone, and you can see how I am deformed. I'm physically deformed. The way I grab the magazine, pick it up, the guy completely tortured me to the point where my physical body, I didn't know it was the case until I saw it on the video. Oh my God! No wonder people think I'm some kind of pedophile or whatever, because my body, I am completely disfigured. I move in such a crippled, disfigured way that I have to be some kind of, sicko, Nobody moves like that. And anyway, it also backed up my court case, but I would not have been able to have that video because I would have sent it to Rolling Stone, except that I got to FedEx like an hour late, or, not very late at all, but they had a deadline, and I had to get to FedEx that day to get it in, and I missed the deadline. They were closed, so I brought it home, and I said, well, I guess it's not meant to be that I send that in, and I kept it, and then I used it as evidence in court, and now it's evidence of the story, which there's no way anybody makes that video unless they're telling the truth. They couldn't possibly think of that, and they could, and the state of being that I'm in at the time is obvious when you look at that video. And then, of course, that's been 7 or 8 years ago, and I'm almost out of the torture situation, and probably within a week, hopefully less, I'll be out of the black hole. I've been in a black hole, and I've been a literal black hole. My body is in tumultuous rebuilding constantly. It's very difficult for me to even sit here and talk. So that's the state I'm in. But no, I never claimed to do any miracles at all, and I never. People misunderstand a lot, because they grab onto whatever they've had in the past or information and try to link my story to something they already know, but it doesn't link with anything anyone already knows, because nothing like my story has ever happened. No one has ever gone on a mission to find.
Let me ask you this. You said the whole story of Jesus is fake. Now, why do you think that? Many people across the world believe in Jesus, millions, if not a billion or two. So why do you think the story of Jesus is fake?
Well, let's say there's 2 or 3 main reasons. The first one is, you rely on the Bible as being the Word of God, right? First of all, otherwise you would never believe it, because people say whatever they're going to say. Otherwise you'd have to believe everybody who says something. So you believe the Bible is the Word of God. Well, then you read in the Bible that what happened at the tomb depends on which gospel, and what Jesus said on the cross depends on which gospel. So you have to throw out this is the Word of God. You can't say that with any credibility. You're just, you're stretching it. That's number one. And then number 2 is, if you look at the reality of the situation, that not one word, nobody wrote one word about Jesus being a preacher or a teacher or a miracle worker while he was alive. Nobody wrote one word about him while he was alive. At least we don't have any record of that. Everything written about Jesus was written after he was dead. And then, okay, so here's kind of the kicker that I see, is that, well, besides, and this will be number 3. I'll save this for number 3, but nothing he said is that great. That's number 3. Nothing he allegedly said is very good. A lot of it's very bad. But the thing, if you read Paul's letters and Peter's, and those 2, the Gospels, scholars, I don't claim to be a scholar, but scholars agree that the Gospels were written not by the people who supposedly wrote them, their name on them. They all agree that these were written after these people were dead, and they weren't written by the people whose name's on the title. And so you have to look at, okay, Paul probably wrote what Paul wrote in the Bible. That's probably, he wrote it. That's him. Guess what he never mentions? Jesus as a teacher, Jesus as a miracle worker, Jesus as born of a virgin. None of the supernatural things about Jesus as a living person is even mentioned or cared about whatsoever. Paul never asked a single question from the disciples about what Jesus taught. All he did was argue with the disciples, pretty much. He expressed no interest whatever in anything Jesus said, nor does
You broke up there, New Age Messiah. Keep going, please.
Okay, so Paul doesn't mention Jesus as any kind of teacher, miracle worker, or born of a virgin, or any of that stuff. And he wrote while, the concurrent probably. That's what scholars believe. So Peter also, I gave up reading the Bible. I hate it, but I think, to my recollection, they believe Peter wrote the Peter, 1st, 2nd, 3rd Peter, and Peter never mentions any of that either. He doesn't mention that he denied Jesus 3 times. He doesn't validate any of the story about Jesus walking around teaching and preaching and doing miracles. The thing about Jesus that I think is true is that he was like many people at the time, kind of a freedom fighter and a believer that Israel was God's chosen people and they needed to be delivered from Roman rule, and he kind of came out as a rebel and they killed him for it. He was probably starting to be an insurrectionist, and not that he was a lame dude or anything, but I think they killed him for that. And then all the stuff about being the Messiah came after that. And there was if you read historical records of the time, there were tons of people claiming to be the Messiah, tons of people looking for the Messiah. It was Messiah fever at the time. So it's not like, and this is what, if you go and you read, okay, the story of the 5 virgins, and people will, or 10 virgins, and the 5 who forgot their oil get the door slammed on and they're gone. If you don't bear fruit, the door is slammed on you and you're gone. If you lie in, Ananias and Sapphira they give 90% of everything they own, but bam, they're dead, because they don't quite tell the truth about it, and they're dead on the spot. And, just so much terror. You're going to burn in hell forever, the Satan. And there was no mention of heaven or hell in the Old Testament the entire time, didn't exist. All of a sudden, it's new and improved now with heaven and hell, you better believe this or you're going the wrong way, And just, I call it a terroristic religion because they use terror to get people to believe it, or, same as the Muslim faith is I hate to use the word faith because I don't believe it's faith, but the Muslim religion teaches, you're going to get these virgins or whatever, who knows, I don't care, it's just all these weird promises, with no validation whatsoever. And if you even look at Jesus' supposed great sacrifice of all time, first of all, just the fact that, or just the proposition that God has to make some little girl pregnant to save the world from the devil is just, it's beyond, it's bizarre, it's, but nobody mocks it even, some people mock it and they're considered evil, but it is really ridiculous. And then, the teachings of, the 5 virgins, forget their oil, they burn in hell. Like, if you don't bear fruit, you burn in hell. All these instances where this and that, you burn in hell. But then people who are, Christians who try to convert people or whatever say how great it is. I mean, they never mention that, or if they do, they use it in some way that's just, they sugarcoat everything or whatever you want to say, or it just depends on who you talk to, but there's no two people who think the same way about the Bible, and the reason for that is because the Bible does not make sense. If something makes sense, people view it the same way, and something that makes sense to everybody, and it doesn't make sense to anybody really, but they pretend like it does, and if you try to get them to make it make sense to you, they won't be able to, and that's why it's 2,000 denominations, and just everybody pointing a finger at everybody else. Not a real Christian, not a true Christian. True Christians do this, true Christians do that. Everybody's pointing a finger at everybody else, and who's left standing? No one. And then those are the main reasons why I don't think any of the teaching is even revolutionary, let alone something to be held up as exemplary. I think there's nothing in there really about going into your own soul and having a contact with spirit. It's like the spirit, it comes from somewhere else, and you invite the Holy Spirit or whatever, the Holy Spirit comes, and, it's just bizarre. And people, you can't understand the Bible unless the Spirit teaches you or whatever, and people think they understand it, but really all they do is interpret it in whatever way makes them feel good, and then they think they understand it because they feel good about it, and then they just block off everybody who has a different, can contradict them. They really become impossible to talk to. And that's just, I think pretty much everybody who's not a Christian finds that to be true, most everybody, that you can't talk to anybody with any, credible answer back about their faith, what they call their faith. I tend to think, okay, if you believe the story, you can have faith in God. If you don't believe the story, you can't. You have to believe the story before you have faith in the Christian God. You have to believe the story. And there's no reason to believe the story. There's no credible evidence that it's true, and all the evidence points to it being not true. So that's it for that.
Well, let me ask you this, though, New Age Messiah. You believe in an Egyptian God that once spoke to you, and there's more proof for Jesus than there is for any Egyptian God. There are very few churches at all for Egyptian gods, but there's tons of churches for Jesus and Christianity. So how can you believe in an Egyptian God but not believe in a God like Jesus?
Well, I don't believe in Egyptian God. I know for a fact. She spoke to me. There's tons of miracles in my life. It's the most miraculous story in the history of the world that's ever been recorded. And so I don't believe, what I'm saying? It's a completely different. I know for a fact that she spoke to me. There's miracles. My story is the greatest true story ever told. And I don't practice a religion about that. I just know it as a fact. And, I know for a fact that when I looked my heart in the mirror, I saw a light, and it was going to change the world. And look your heart in the mirror, if you just think about it, is a profound statement. You don't just say it's something it's radical. It's like, because people look, when you say, for example, look yourself in the mirror, you cannot see your true self in the mirror. all you see is your image. So the whole thing about look yourself in the mirror is bogus. It does you no good. I mean, a little bit maybe. You could say, okay, there's a little bit of it. You can can you really look at yourself in the mirror and think that's a good guy or what, but that's not really, you're not going to get into your true soul by looking at yourself in the mirror, and you're not going to really challenge or, whatever. It's a bogus saying, basically, and look your heart in the mirror replaces it because you are really getting in there. But, okay, so the question was Egyptian God versus Christian God. There's as many people who believe the Muslim faith as there is Christian, pretty much, and there's a ton of them are Hindus, and a ton of them believe something else. It doesn't make the slightest difference how many people believe something, because believing is not knowing. And there's one person that I know of. There might be others. Obviously there are, otherwise the goddess of Egypt and all this. There's people who know, otherwise you wouldn't be seeing all these symbols from Egypt. They know. They don't believe. They don't have to go around preaching. They just know. I kind of have to go around. I don't preach, but my situation is a little different because I had a revelation. I have a story. I figured it was extremely important to the goddess, otherwise she wouldn't have bothered, So I kind of have this, okay, it's important to the goddess, so it's got to be important, even though really nothing has happened. I mean, there's been more miracles and I'm kind of making progress, but nothing on the scale of what I thought should happen has happened, And that fact, that there's so many people who believe in a Christian God, so many people who believe, in the Muslim God or whatever, it's completely irrelevant because people believe a lot of different things, and it doesn't matter. Your belief is even just saying that you believe, that automatically discredits whatever, not discredits 100%, but it makes it, you got to take it with a grain of salt. I believe something. That doesn't mean anything, really.
Thank you for that. We have a question from Nolo in the LOP chat. Go ahead, Nolo.
Yes, this is Nolo. My question would be, what's your definition of Messiah? Not say a dictionary definition, but what that word Messiah means to you and how it relates to your mission.
Great question, because here's why I came up with that word. It's completely reasonable, even though people might not think it is, at first glance. But when I got tortured, this is, you might want to shut your ears if you don't want to hear anything icky, because what the guy did to me when he tortured me was icky, 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 icky. But the thing that he did that was the most horrible, I was driving a golf cart, and he had already tortured me and put me in a state of shock, kind of almost, psychic paralysis in a way. And he said in a deep, booming voice, I was driving the golf cart, he said, bend over, I'll drive. And I had been in this mission of being real, and, reality is God, and my mind was kind of programmed that way, where I was going to really imagine, that happening, and I did. And I imagined the hatred and the violence and the force that he implied, and I imagined it happening, and somehow my psyche responded to that, and it created that as a physical reality in my body, created with psychic tension from my mind somehow. I don't really know how to describe it, but I was pierced, or like a submarine, or a torpedo, whoomp, and it completely destroyed my soul. My memories is like, you read about people who have a near-death experience, and their whole life flashes before their eyes. My whole life went into the pit at that very instant. It was just like every memory I ever had fell in one big collapse, boom, into this death, horror, awful, and it physically penetrated me in a way, it really did. I can't, and you can see it in that video that I talked about, that my body is completely inside out, inside. I'm a black hole. So that created the way, the physicality of that inside my soul created like a spiked thing going around the top of my brain, where there was psychic phenomena that was like little hooks going around in circles around the top of my head, and they were, I don't know how to describe it except for that. When I experienced those things going around the top of my head, I thought that is a crown of thorns. and it felt exactly like a crown of thorns. I can't tell anybody else. Nobody else can possibly imagine what I'm saying, but I drew a picture of it like years ago that I didn't know at the time that it was a black hole. You know, I just drew what I was experiencing in my soul, and it has all these little spikes going around, you know. But I thought, okay, that's a freaking crown of thorns. And then because of, you know, bend over, I'll drive and the penetration there, I also had a psychic experience, or, you know, not psychic, real, an absolute experience of being like a spear in my belly. It felt like that. And at that same moment, and there had just been, when I was watching the Super Bowl, the Pope, if you go, whenever Paul McCartney did the Super Bowl, the Pope was came out on Easter and couldn't speak. It was kind of around that time frame. I think about 2006, something like that, out of 7 maybe. But the Pope not being able to come out and speak and everything, I had decided, okay, I'm the new Pope. And then when I felt the new Pope, the real Pope of the real God is basically what I was. I didn't know of a goddess at that time, and I didn't know really what I was. I knew something was going on. And then when I felt this, okay, spear in my belly and crown of thorns inside the top of my head, and, you know, revelation, and I sacrificed myself, and there's miracles, I'm the New Age Messiah. I didn't really like the term New Age, but you have to understand, I had been in hell, I mean a literal hell, for 3 or 4 years. I was near death, and nothing, you know, it just was a truly messianic experience of torture and suffering I was going through that beyond any you know, nobody can possibly imagine how bad it was. It's still really bad, but it was really, really, really bad. You know, and everybody abandoned me. Everybody hated me, thought I was a pedophile, rapist, stalker. I was broke. I was dying. Nobody helped. Everywhere I went, they threw me out. You know, courtroom, the judge's former partners with a lawyer against me, threw my case out, everything. Police turned on me. Mental health people screwed me over, you know, basically told me I was imagining things. Just, you know, just completely, even though things were happening and I was telling them about the miracles, nobody cared. Nobody, you know, it was just like, whatever. So I just, at that point, I said, okay, I'm the New Age Messiah. And then shortly thereafter, I went online as a New Age Messiah on the local website. And I used to write, like I said before, I used to write really prolifically. I could still write pretty well, even though I couldn't really talk or hold my eyes in a certain, you know, I couldn't look at people and talk to them. But I could write still pretty well. So I went on some websites and wrote, and even though I could write pretty well, I wasn't really normal, and people could tell. And so, okay, he thinks he's a New Age Messiah, he's crazy, you know. But really, I had a reason to believe it, but I couldn't tell people what it was, really, you know. But I did cause, on Hannity Forum, all the people from MSNBC came over because I said I'm, the left and the right are having a tug of war. I called it the lying left and the wretched righteousness of the right wing, whatever, I can't remember exactly, but I said I'm cutting the rope and they're playing tug of war, and I cut the rope and they all fall on their butt, you know. And I said, you know, it was just like a really powerful thing that I wrote on Hannity.com, and I had to walk out of the room because, like, oh my God, I can't believe I just freaking posted that, you know. I walked out of the room, walked around the block or whatever, came back in, and there was like 10 posts deleted and a bunch of users banned, and then like a couple hours later, they're on the Hannity forum and says, oh my God, Olbermann just came on the show and said Hannity forum is the worst person in the world and the worst place in the world. So I know what happened. MSNBC saw my freaking post, and they came over there, and it was they flamed Hannity, and it was on this freaking television the same day. I'm like, holy crap, I knew that was powerful, but I didn't know it was, that powerful or whatever, oh man. And that was just the beginning. It kept going like that, pretty much everywhere I went online, there was some kind of, huge situation going on. Like I went on the Lost website, I ended up solving Lost, and the goddess was in the show, etc., etc. So that was the question, I think. Oh yeah, New Age Messiah. But as far as what it means, I don't know what it means, except that the old age Messiah is fake, and the goddess is making a new one. And I think, if you think, okay, why would she do that? I don't absolutely know, but my thinking is, number one, that I kind of said the magic words and went on the magic mission, number one. Number two, I followed through with it and created something, and, it was real. And then number three, the timing of it happening is at the cusp of the, alleged New Age. I kind of believe that. I like one of my favorite songs ever is "This Is the Story of the Age of Aquarius." That's one of the most uplifting songs I've ever heard, and it kind of made me feel like, yeah, I'm ready for a new age. So at the same time, I think a lot of New Agers are lunatics and seriously messed up in the head. So I didn't really like the term New Age, but Messiah is now defined really by sacrifice, mission, and if you read Joseph Campbell, he has a blueprint of the hero with 1,000 faces, the prototype, whatever story of. He even says there's an abyss, there's a revelation, there's a goddess, there's the boon, the thing that you bring back to humanity after your mission is over. He's got it all laid out, in a scholarly way before I ever remotely considered going on a mission, and I didn't know about it until I read about it like a couple of years ago. Okay, here's this guy named Joseph Campbell. He inspired the guy who wrote Star Wars, whatever. So there's academic support for the type of thing that happened, in that way, and there's a much longer history of goddess than there is Jesus, thousands of years longer, So that, I guess that's my answer to that question.
Fascinating story, New Age Messiah. I'm glad you're on the show, and thanks for coming on. Now that you're New Age Messiah, what's your goals? What's your destiny? What has God has told you to do in the future? Are you here to save us? Are you here to save the world? Or are you here to change the world?
Well, I have to wait until I'm enlightened. I feel like I'll know when I'm enlightened. I kind of trudge through. I kind of do what I kind of want to do based on who I was before and what I kind of thought. My assumption is that because she spoke to me and she did these miracles, that she must kind of think I'm at least, kind of on track as far as how I view the world and what I want and what I think is right. And, so I've kind of stuck with my basic premises and everything, for the most part. But that's the only word she ever spoke to me. I'm very angry, tough nut cooking. That's the only word she ever spoke to me. I've never had even a slight inkling beyond that from her, other than, just occasional miracles that kind of tell me, yeah, it's still alive, dude, you're still going, I'm still cooking, And as far as here's what I'm thinking of doing is my deepest thoughts, if I go back, I got 4 or 5 deepest thoughts. First one was the most important thing you can do in life is teach children about the world and kind of give them like their basic underpinning of, what the world is and how it is. That's like the biggest responsibility in the world. That's what I thought when I was like 20 years old, I went into teaching, tried to go into teaching as a profession, but I was too fun. The kids had too much fun, and he told me you're not cut out to be a teacher because the kids went crazy when I was teaching them, happy crazy. So then, okay, that was the one thing, and then the second thing, I was in Daytona Beach this was during the Army. I was in Yugoslavia, Croatia, touring. I was stationed in Germany, and I went on a Eurail trip, and I went to Croatia, and I went to this little jewelry stand, and there was like these things, and I thought, that's the most personal thing you can possibly ever do for someone is to make them something that they wear. That's just like, that's the deepest, most powerful, or whatever you want to say, requires the most integrity. And that was, when I was not even 30 years old, I kind of came to that. So teaching kids and making things personal for people to wear as a symbol or whatever, that was, to me, the 2 most important things a person could ever do. So that ends up being kind of what I'm doing, because my product is child-oriented to an extent, and it's also, what they call it, when you wear something that's profound, it's the symbol thing that you wear, whatever. I forget the word for it, but anyway, but I do have a plan that I'm working on, not really a plan, but 3 or 4 people told me you should go on Shark Tank, and I said, yeah, blew it off. I don't watch TV. I don't care about Shark Tanks, and then I just finally said, you know what, I'm going to do what people say I should do. So I applied to be on Shark Tank, and then like within a day or 2 of me applying to be on Shark Tank, I kind of going through all my Facebook. When I first went on Facebook, it was just because people said you should go on Facebook. This was years ago. I was probably in the first year I was on Facebook. I went through and looked for people that were into enlightenment or whatever, and I clicked a few friends that I had no idea who they were, but they were kind of in those interests. I never went back to Facebook again for years and years. And I finally got back on Facebook a little bit because my high schoolers, and whatever, just to kind of hopefully maybe, get some people to be in to look your heart in the mirror. Just a totally, completely lame attempt, But anyway, I was going through, just after applying to Shark Tank, I was going through my old Facebook contacts, and here's this lady who was doing an interview of somebody who was a producer on Shark Tank. So I'm like, that's weird. So I go and I see this interview of the lady as a producer on Shark Tank, and the lady who's interviewing her is called Goddess Isis Sims, or she's got Goddess or something in her name, and it's like, so I emailed the producer and says, I just applied to Shark Tank and I had a goddess speak to me, and you were just interviewed by this Goddess Sims lady or whatever, so I just thought I might drop you a line, and that's all I wrote. And I didn't hear anything back for 3 or 4 months, and 3 or 4 months later, she emails me back and says, we were all kind of booked up for that season, but if you're interested in this season, drop me a line in about March. So I did, emailed back and forth a couple times, and now I'm through the first round on Shark Tank, and I'm going to send in an audition video, and who knows, maybe I'll be on Shark Tank. If I'm on Shark Tank, and because I told them for Shark Tank, I said I'm in the religion business selling miracles. That was going back to what I was saying, where I kind of just stick with my basic principles because she chose me. I must not be all bad or whatever. My basic principle is I think capitalism is the only intelligent way to work. Nothing else works. If there was a better way, maybe somebody will think of it. I'm not saying there isn't a better way, but I said in my little Shark Tank thing, I said, I believe in capitalism, but I know my religion for a fact. I'm a for-profit, blah, blah, blah. Just kind of little quippy sayings with a few pictures, and, so that's going to be my spiel. If they put me on Shark Tank as in the religion business, and I go on there, and I think probably I'll promote it as the new one world religion if they let me on the show. They probably won't, but if they do let me on the show, I'll say, yes, I believe this is a new one world religion, and you can get in early on the religion business, So it's kind of to make it less the way it is. They see religion is really, really, really people with their panties in a bunch for the most part, and it really doesn't have to be that way. And one of the core ideas I had was that non-profit status. No, I was into Ayn Rand for a while, and she was the altruism thing, and I don't really buy into Ayn Rand that much, but it is effective the way she talks about it, and it at least makes you think a little bit about altruism and doing things kind of for free or allegedly for free, for people and charity and all this stuff. And I just think, if somebody's if you're doing something worth doing, people will pay you to do it. And in a sense, they do pay you to do the religious thing. People build churches and they get paid to do the preacher thing and everything, but it's not for profit in this whole thing, and they, what I mean? There's I think it should be for profit because you're giving people something. That's not that I am necessarily, what I mean? I'm not bragging that I'm giving people anything. I'm just saying I had a fundamental idea about it before I ever looked my heart in the mirror, before I was ever, chosen or whatever, before I had a revelation, before I had a product. I just had a fundamental idea that no matter what you're doing, if it should be worth it to other people. You should have an occupation that people are willing to pay you to do. And I had a really bad view of gambling, making money for nothing, those kind of things. I just thought those are not productive. And my economic ideas for politics, I just think if you have money and it's not being put to use, you should have, all money should be in use. And any money that's sitting there in tax shelters and hiding and all this stuff, you should have a shakedown of that money where you have to invest it. Otherwise, you can't put it, and that's a little bit unrelated, and I'm on a sidetrack a little bit, but I have that idea kind of related to religion should be a business and should just be unashamedly a business, and there's no shame in business. no shame in profit, no shame in making money for what you do well for other people, and everything I do is for other people. I do none of this for myself. I totally declared a mission because I felt like I was robbed of something by not being taught anything real and true in my youth that would help me to form sort of a foundation or a spiritual well-being. You know, I was railroaded into this believer burn terroristic stuff and completely messed with my soul. You know, I gave my heart to it. I felt completely cheated, and I felt like most of the Eastern type stuff where, you hum or whatever, I just felt like, you know what, if that stuff was going to work, it would have worked a long time ago. It hasn't worked. Nothing that exists has worked. The world is the way it is because nothing that exists has worked. We need something new. That was we need something new. I'm going to find something new. I believe I can find something new. I believe, basically because when I said I don't believe it, that day on that street, I opened my eyes to an extent, or my eyes are open to an extent where I felt I can find something new because now I am fresh. I have my own eyes to see with. I'm not seeing through a filter. I'm done with society's teachings. I'm done with the religious teachings. I am my own person. I'm going to use my own mind to find something that I can help the world with, for people to follow in my footsteps, and, my progeny, whatever, the next generations, whatever. There's none of it was designed to help me. I have no desire whatsoever to be in a fancy suit, and nothing that Donald Trump says about himself impresses me at all. As far as he's rich, and I couldn't care less. Are you honest? Do you tell the truth? The fact that he donated to Hillary and Reid and all these people. He's obviously very comfortable with corruption, and I'm not. So I'm kind of going off on a tangent there. So I'll let the mic go. Bye.
Oh, good, man. You're here for an interview. I do have a question of my own for you too. Do you plan on starting your own faith? And if so, are you going to have followers? And do you have followers already? People follow you around and listen to your teachings?
No, I don't. Well, as far as the question of right now, nobody follows me. Pretty much everybody thinks I'm an idiot. The people I work with every day kind of see a little bit, that I'm not your ordinary guy, but and they kind of believe in me a little bit, but I don't tell them anything, because I might get fired, I work for a big company, and they got stockholders and everything, so I just kind of keep it on the down low, and I don't talk to anybody locally at all. Once in a while, I'll tell somebody a little something, but the only following I have is a little bit like when I post about Lost. The website where I wrote about Lost, when I post there, a lot of times there's 1,000 clicks within a couple hours. One time I posted there, and within an hour there was, it's about the size of LOP. There's, a couple hundred people at a time on there usually, and there were 7,000 people. They came to look at what I wrote. Somebody must have put it somewhere and said, look at this crap, and holy crap, look at this. It was my flyer for New Age Messiah, the movie, and there were 7,000 people on there within an hour, and there is that kind of thing. And then when I was in the news and everything, I had a million hits on my website and blah blah. But nothing has come of it. No one has contacted me whatsoever. No one cares what I think. My kids they realized when I first when I solved Lost, or when they first read my story when I first wrote it, they're like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. This is great. Oh my gosh, they were there, but then there was no money. Nothing happened. I wasn't the Messiah. I was just still a wretched cripple, barely surviving, and had nothing for them other than that I cared for them, and even that I wasn't able to do too well because I was suffering and helpless in a lot of ways. And so they eventually drifted away and stopped caring. And I have no friends, not really, and nobody follows me. But I will have, like I said, when I am going through the enlightenment process. That's something I almost never talk about. If you read A.H. Almas and other people, there is a path into your soul where you do connect with the source, and you do let go of your fears and anything that blocks the spirit, and you find what I would call the non-being. You have being and non-being. You find there is a place, if you go deep enough, there is a place where you don't exist that's within your soul. And your existence is created every millisecond, a small time period as you can imagine. Every instant, your being is recreated. And there is a point, not a point, but a sort of an area where it is being recreated. And you can go in there and you can find it. And if you allow it to be, if you allow yourself to be there where you are being instantaneously created, then that instantaneous creation can go the path it needs to go. There's like a map that the spirit has where it knows where it needs to go, and then your psyche and your fear is just a general word. It's something you don't even know that you fear, You don't even know that you're holding on in the subconscious, whatever you want to call it. I call it the roots. Your mind forms roots, just like a tree, into your physical body, and you hold on. And those roots grasp, and that's... So I'm letting go, letting the spirit move, and I am being enlightened. There's massive, tumultuous, unbelievable crap going on in my soul 24/7 every day. And once that process completes, I'll be an enlightened person, which is completely possible for everybody, They can be enlightened. It's not like I'm special. It's hard, and not many people will do it because it's so hard. But once I'm enlightened, I may have a teaching. I had a vision of myself when I was, 20 or something, as being a person who stood in a stadium and talked to people. When I was at the Radiohead concert, I held my arms wide open, and I felt like the whole crowd there, it was an outdoor stadium. It was completely beautiful, It was a beautiful night, beautiful music. And there was 30,000 people or however many people, and I felt like every single one of them I felt like an angel embracing every single one of them all at once, and it was just this beautiful feeling. And when I'm in my heart, which is rare because it's blocked off, but when I'm in my heart, I do have like a capacity to be someone who could change the world in that sense, especially given that there's circumstances about me that kind of raise attention. It's like, well, if this is all really true, it's one thing to be a spiritual teacher. There are great spiritual teachers, but are they somebody that has, you know what I mean? I don't really even know how to say it because I don't want to brag. But, I came from where no man has gone before, absolutely, and I have something no man, you know what I mean? It's really radical, and there is an absolute fact, goddess. No one can discredit me. The more you research my story, the more you will know it's true. And there's like a little way to look at it that I can think of, if you don't believe my story, the only way not to believe my story is to have some kind of negative, if you look at, biblical principles of good and bad, right and wrong, you have to be in a very negative spiritual place to disbelieve my story, to disbelieve that all this is true. Because it's impossible that I could make it up, number one. It's all in court documents. It's in records everywhere. It's completely impossible not to believe my story unless you have some kind of negative, anti-spiritual, the kind of things they attribute to people for not believing in Jesus. But the fact is, there's no reason to believe in Jesus, no rational reason. You can't say, well, obviously God needs to save the world, so he impregnates a little girl and from the devil, Obviously, if you don't believe that, you're going to burn in hell. It's just, that's the way it is. It's justice. There's nothing obvious about this story. There's nothing rational about it. Whereas my story, it's completely obvious that it's true. It's completely irrational to disbelieve it. And to take the only really words, the goddess is angry and she's cooking, that's one, tenet. The next one, look your heart in the mirror. Which one do you not like? Which one, what god or goddess wouldn't be angry at the world right now? Obviously there's an anger because I was tortured, screwed over, the courts threw me, the judges, former partners, the lawyers against me, it was completely corrupt. I have the statements from the judge on record, probably the most idiotic, corrupt statement any judge ever made on the record. I can't wait for it to be a movie so that the judge can just be completely humiliated. And I mean, really, he will be. I'm not just saying that. I'm not prejudiced at all. It's the most ridiculous crap he said, and his former partners and lawyers against me. So I think, eventually, let's say it's a movie, let's say I'm on Shark Tank. I mean, I probably won't be on Shark Tank because I'm politically incorrect, and they'll be like, oh, we don't want this guy on there. He might, he might give the station a bad name or whatever. I don't know. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But whatever happens, this story has to be a movie. And then let's say it's a movie, then all of a sudden, mirrors, miracles, there's so many things that are just, miraculous story. Look your heart in the mirror. LYHITM, if you look at it as a word, it's lightum. So you have the age of enlightenment. There's just so many things. The mirror shine a light. It's incredible how much it's all woven into the fabric of Look Your Heart in the Mirror of, it's obviously something like that. It just obviously is. What else could it be? I mean, and then people say, oh, it's a devil. There's so many people have told me it's a demon who spoke to you. She's a demon. She's a fallen angel. Whatever. It's like, well, let me tell you something. She loves me. She tells the world through me, whatever. Look your heart in the mirror. Is that a bad message? Are you really scared of that? Does that sound like a devil? You know what I mean. So anyway, that's it.
So as you guys all know, I am the master of the woo. I bring the woo. Now for our interview, it's a woo segment. Now, New Age Messiah, I have to ask you this. Some people say the Egyptian gods are the Anunnaki, an alien race, a very intelligent alien race. Could it be possible that aliens have been speaking to you?
Well, they can do miracles, and they keep the same name and the same who they are for thousands and thousands of years. I don't know. It doesn't, all I know is that she said her name, she's 100% credible, she saw what was going on at the Rolling Stone magazine, she saw unbelievable stuff to put it all together into synchronicity type pattern. So she's omniscient, she's omnipresent, she spoke to me from within my soul, she's completely credible as an Egyptian goddess, she said her name. Her name is supported by scholarly work as being the ruler of the universe, basically. And if that ruler of the universe, I don't know historically anything about Anunnaki. I'm not afraid of that type of situation, that type of information. I would say there's a possibility, but typically, typically what I read is kind of silly stuff. Like I read a lot of Egyptian stuff and I think it's silly, It's just silly myth people made up. I don't hold the Egyptian, there's no doctrine in Egyptian lore that I say this is the way it is, this is the Egyptian religion or anything like that. I don't have any of that. And a lot of what I read about Anunnaki and stuff is just what I would call, nonsense that people make up in their own, whatever. But I think there's a credible case can be made for giants and, there being some kind of beings other than human beings that, had something to do. But, Tefnut is a fact, and it's a credible fact. And I think, because my story cannot be discredited, Tefnut is completely legitimized. Egyptians built the pyramids, probably, who knows who built them when they were built, but there's no way in hell anybody on earth can say how they did it. With any, they can't. So there's something there. Now, can you say with any kind of authority that there's something to the Anunnaki stuff? I don't know. Nothing I've ever read has given me any kind of indication that there's a factual, credible evidence that that's fat. You know what I'm saying? There's rock solid evidence now that the Egyptians knew, at least to some extent, what they were talking about. Their gods and goddesses were real. At least one of them was, and it just follows that the other ones were too. I think I'm not going to state that as a fact. The only thing I know for a fact is that Tefnut is real. So there's not even the slightest chance that Tefnut is evil or that she's some kind of anti-anything. She's perfectly good. She cared for me in a way, and my morals, my intentions were 100% pure. I can't, like convince anybody of that, but I'm just saying I wanted to find something new to help the world come to nature, accept reality, be real, be natural, I just felt like that was like a worthy cause, and I would be able to find something. My intentions were 100% pure, and I remember when I got tortured, and I was going down really, really fast. My girlfriend dumped me. I was in the worst possible condition, and I just thought all I wanted to do was find something new. This cannot be the final answer from the universe or whatever you want to say. I didn't even really use the term universe in my mind at the time. I just thought this can't be the final answer. I had faith. I had faith that this was not the final answer. That was way before I had been on a mission in the first place. So that's how deep my torture was, and how, completely removed from who I really was, I had been. And it's like when I realized, oh my God, I was on a mission to find something new, and I found something new. And then I looked at a painting that I did like 15 years earlier that happened to be freaking an artist's rendition of Coeur d'Alene, which is the town I was living in. Coeur means heart, It's like, oh my God, I painted Coeur d'Alene 15 years before I ever got here. This is all starting to make sense. And this is before the really, really miraculous stuff started happening, that I just realized, oh my gosh, there is a plan. I am on to something really huge, This, even though, and I'm telling you, I can tell you 1,000 times over, with as much feeling as possible, my suffering and what I've gone through is 100% equal to what I'm saying it is messianic, it is a goddess, it is a new revelation, it is a new age, it is a freaking complete reversal of many thousands of years of, or whatever you want to say, is a complete reversal. It proves a lot of things that have been taught for a long time. It proves them false. And, at least I think it proves them false. And that my suffering is totally on that scale. It totally is, and what I've been through. And it's up to the scale of the story. The story is beyond imagination miraculous. And the question was Anunnaki, I think, and I got way off of that. Sorry about that.
I have a good question for you. Now, have you ever been to Egypt? And if not, do you plan on going there? It might be good for you, man. You might walk in the pyramids, have a revelation, or you might complete your Messiah training. So the question is, have you ever been to Egypt? And if not, do you plan on going there sometime?
I've never been to Egypt. My kids went there. Their in-laws, or my mother, mother-in-law and father-in-law were Germans, and they go to Germany to visit. And the German side of the family has, good, sizable income, whatever, and they take the kids to various places. They've taken them to Egypt, and they've seen the pyramids. I haven't. I don't necessarily view the actual geographical place of Egypt as significant. I think Coeur d'Alene is significant because Coeur means heart, and this happened here, and, I think there's earth changes. I don't know what they are. I've read certain prophecies about the way that it's going to look once all these changes happen, and Coeur d'Alene is kind of right in here, is going to be sort of oceanfront property or whatever, and there's a big aquifer under here. It's like one of the largest freshwater bodies in the world, and it's an incredibly beautiful place, and I just think this place is kind of special now. I don't have any real longing to go to Egypt. I might in the future, but I think the Middle East is pretty far oversold now. As far as, to me, the Middle East would be a horrible place to go, a horrible place to be, and for that reason, that it's overswam with that kind of, call it faith, whatever you want to say, is just, that's probably a little bit negative. Obviously I'd love to see the pyramids and stuff, but it's not like a high priority at all.
Well, New Age Messiah, you claim to be the New Age Messiah, and I'd like your wisdom on something. What is the meaning of life? Why are we here, do you think?
Geez, I don't have any better answer than anybody else. That's I will say that here's like I have character flaws. I've always had character flaws. Uh, I've had thoughts that were, not even close to nice about other people, and I just have had negative attitudes about people and everything, but when you get tortured and you're near death, you realize how much of a massive undertaking it is for every single person to go through life. It's just, for every single person, it's a massive undertaking, and they all have just an incredible responsibility of being alive, and no one should be taken lightly, and their souls are precious and valuable, and you know what I mean? It's just, once you get there to where you're helpless, you just realize, oh my gosh, because I was a strong person. I was not the strongest, but, I learned Russian, learned German. When I went to Germany in the Army, I taught myself German. I became fluent. I was the only guy in the whole thing to learn to have perfect scores in German and Russian, in either language, I meant to say. Nobody else in our whole thing, it was 100 people, had a perfect score in either language. I had a perfect score in both. I was totally physically perfect as far as being able to run the farthest and to do the most. I won awards for physical stuff, and plus I had a good personality and dancing, and I was not like this alpha male, but I was very close, alpha minus. and so and then you go around thinking you're hot and whatever, and once you're down, then you're like, oh my gosh, and you think, okay, that person I don't think of as significant in my egotistical type standpoint, but when I look at that person, they have an enormous responsibility, and I don't want to use the word burden, but it's an extremely difficult challenge to stay alive and to be a person. It's really, and especially nowadays, we're being bombarded with so many different teachings, whatever you want to say, attitudes, and just being brainwashed constantly in the media, and there's no easy way right now, and everybody needs to be cared for and know, in a way, not like liberals kind of. To me, they're really more, I don't know how to say it. I'm not going to a good place right now, but I don't like liberal attitudes about life, people, and everything. They're not deep enough, and I think if anybody wants to feel what I feel, and to kind of go where I've been a little bit, is just get into Radiohead, listen to Radiohead music, like OK Computer and some of the other songs, where that music gets to such a place of vulnerability and weakness, and yet still you have this profound, you, at the same time that you feel completely weak and powerless, you also have this profound need to do something great. And that I think everybody has, and and that needs to be brought up in people and in children, as a, so I guess that would be the less of the meaning of life, is you can't discount it in other people. Here's like my little test of a soul, is you are an awareness platform or an awareness field, and when someone enters your field, what happens to them in your soul? Someone walks into your soul field, what happens to them? That's your test of your soul. How are they treated inside your soul before they ever even know that they're inside your soul, before they know you're thinking about them, before anything happens, words or anything happens? What happens to a person when they enter your field of awareness? And that's who you are, really, is what happens to other people when they enter your field of awareness. And nothing good happens to most people. Don't get me wrong. When they enter my field of awareness, nothing good happens to them. I'm still tortured. I have no compassion, very little compassion. I feel torture all the time. I don't reach out. I don't care. I don't do anything nice for anybody hard. I do, at work. You know what I'm saying? I'm not like a bad person, but I don't have the little, I don't go to Africa and take care of people and give them water, and I don't, you know what I'm saying? I don't go to hospitals and visit people. I don't do any of that kind of stuff. But I do have a test that I eventually, hopefully, will pass whenever any person enters into my field of awareness, that they will be welcome and I will care for them and care about them. And, that's, I guess, that's the where you know how your soul is, and that's your heart. And one thing I learned about Egypt recently that's really interesting, and I think it was Titanic posted the video or something about what they did with the mummies, is they pulled the brains out, they pulled everything out except the heart. They left the heart in because that's your soul. And, forget your brains, it's in your heart, And I think the Egyptians had that right. And your heart gets blocked out when you're a child because you get stepped on really bad, and you're too sensitive, and you just have to block it. And then that blockage becomes almost impenetrable, except that unless you go through the spiritual rebirth, which is not happen because you believe in Jesus. It happens because you meet the source and you allow it, la la la. It's not a snap decision about whether you believe her story or not. It's a process that takes years and years of spiritual discipline and comprehension and understanding and passion and all that, all the good stuff. You got to go through it. There's nothing easy about it at all. So that's my what is the meaning of life answer, which is not very meaningful.
So, being a New Age Messiah, do you have any special abilities or powers? Jesus, made water into wine. He walked on water. What can you do?
Well, I think those are made up stories, and in fact, I would bet I already bet my life on it that it's made up stories, and I can't do anything. I'm the hero of the greatest true story ever told. I have the most profound words ever spoken. And, whether I may have, certain people like to get struck by lightning or something, whatever, something weird happens to them, all of a sudden they speak a foreign language or that they never learned, or, weird things happen. I am not enlightened. I am still the struggling person. When I am enlightened, I may have superpowers of, ESP and, all these things that some people in the New Age movement say they can do. I may be able to do some really cool stuff. The goddess may empower me somehow to do things. She could do anything that I don't know about now. So far, she has not helped me at all, hardly, except for to do miracles, so I knew I was on a path. But it's possible when I go into the enlightened state, that I could become some kind of just basically from going from a black hole into a enlightened being could be some kind of unprecedented magical type thing. I don't know, but I kind of doubt it. I think we're all given enough. First of all, miracles, every speck of everything is a miracle, period. There's nothing that isn't a miracle. And so we're all given enough to do whatever we want, in that way, and can do lots of amazing things just without any kind of being special or whatever, So just being able to be alive and knowing what I know and being able to do what I do. When I was Gloopy Boy, they were posting things like Million Gloopy March, what would Gloopy do, I was already kind of on that, so when I've been through what I've been through and I become enlightened, who knows how I'll be, but I would guess I'll be the type of person who can command an audience in a stadium and, bring people to their feet and start a movement and, completely transform the world and, have 1 billion people wearing Look Your Heart in the Mirrors and
In closing this interview, do you have anything special you want to say to the listeners in the chat room? Anything profound you wish to bring out? Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the New Age Messiah interview on LOP Chat by Propaganda Radio. So, New Age Messiah, any final thoughts?
Well, I appreciate, I wish I'd have been enlightened by the time I got on the show, but I'm not. But, it was nice to be able to tell a story, and I can tell by the comments most people think it's garbage, but that's been the case ever since I started, and it hasn't affected me one bit.
Great, man. Thanks for coming on here. We appreciate it. We'll have you back on in the future. This concludes our interview. You've been listening to the interview with New Age Messiah in LOP Chat and the Biased Propaganda Radio. You guys have a good night.